Welcome to the Boardroom Zen. I am your host, Megha Joshi. In this show, we hear the untold stories and best practices from world-class business executives on how they deal with pressure and setbacks in the boardroom and beyond. Yes, these business leaders are no superhumans, but they have found their unique formula to stay grounded and bring their A game to the table amidst the chaos. So let's begin. Today, I bring to you a special guest who is deeply committed to leadership development and organizational transformation. He is the managing director for the Center of Creative Leadership, also known as CCL, where he oversees India and South Asia region, along with CCL's Global Support Center. Over the last 5 years with CCL, he has positively influenced the trajectory of over 7,500 leaders across the region. Prior to CCL, he has led several human-centric transformations across PwC, Schneider, Mercer, and KPMG, to name a few. Please join me in welcoming Muniinder Anand. Muniinder, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Megha. Honored to be here today.
Thank you, Muniinder. From what I know a little bit about you, there is one particular story that I'd love to dive into from your early professional years. I've heard you mention an experience where you were working as a management consultant in Lebanon, and it was late in the evening. You still had a couple of hours of work to plow through the day before you closed the shop, but your client wanted to leave for the mountains, and it was something that didn't necessarily align with how you wanted to approach that day. So would you be able to elaborate on that episode and what you drew from that particular experience?
Great question to start off with, Megha. And, this is an experience, and I call this more of a lesson or a life experience, if you will, right? And why do I say that? Because these are small anecdotes that you have, that you experience when you're working, and especially as a consultant, that stay for you for life. So the long story short was that, like you rightly said, it was almost 5 p.m. and a weekend, not a normal day. And I wanted to stretch for the next 2 hours so that I could finish my work. And I kind of made that request to the client. And I'll tell you what the client said that kind of had a lasting impact on me was, the client said, Muninder, why don't we, or rather, we should connect on Monday because I have to go to the mountains. And then she said, while she was getting up and packing her bag, because she didn't give me a chance to say, can we please stay along? Can we please finish? And so on and so forth. She just said, Muninder, you have only one life. Live it. So it was one statement, but if you reflect on the statement, it's really, really deep in terms of how it makes you feel when someone tells you only have one life and why don't you live it? Again, very simple, right? My learning, since you asked for it, Megha, my learnings from this particular experience, not every situation requires you to operate rigidly is what I learned. That was my first lesson that I had from this experience. As per the rules to build that and that you operate with. It's important for us as humans to be flexible. And I think we've learned that even during the COVID period, right? Even if it means for us to let go of our internal frameworks and the hidden benefits that we have. So you know what, when I reflect back now, and she pushed me to say, Muninder, stay back over the weekend, I wouldn't have been able to see the natural caves of Zito Grotto, which people travel, thousands of miles to be there. And that's a different speciality in Lebanon.
Wow.
I also believe, Megha, that identity is most important in leadership, and your work is directly proportionate to that. When you talk about image building, it includes your dedication, interest, and knowledge of your work, and not just limited to mechanically performing as much as possible. So that's the third learning, if you will, from that particular experience. Also, when I say image building, it doesn't mean, or it doesn't mean it comes easy. Image building for leadership requires persistence, and our identities are shaped by various experiences we've lived through. And again, when I spoke to you, you shared your experiences, Megha, exactly that, right? So the rather at CCL, we call it a heat experience. The heat experiences we've had in life is actually shaped who we are today.
Yes.
Again, I talked about identity, I talked about image building, and I want to talk about adaptation now. Adaptation is a part of any leader's identity. As a leader, we need to keep focus on the set target, even if there's a moment of turbulence, right? Because life is not going to be smooth all through. Hard work, and I can tell you now in CCL as I reflect back, hard work is important to reach for those targets, and there's no substitute for hard work. What can enable leaders is if we cultivate flexibility and resilience while keeping our individuality intact.
Right.
That can actually get us more results, because I strongly believe, not now, it's been over a decade and a half, that each one of us is uniquely gifted.
Yes.
And also, for a well-rounded approach in professional life, it's important to have work-life balance. So not in the sense that you hear work-life balance, but when life gives you an opportunity, and Lebanon was a great example that I have for me, make the most of it. The other anecdote that I'll share with you, which is not related to Lebanon, but comes to our mind is, and that's something I apply and I encourage everyone that's listening today to apply, is my manager, when I used to travel to the US, this was early in my career, told me, Muninder, experience the place that you visit as if it's the last time you're coming there. Even if you know you're coming back after 3 months. And your entire mindset changes towards that place, how you experience it, how much how much time you spend outside. So I think it's all collation of, your mindset, if you will. So I'll probably pause there, Megha.
Beautifully summarized, Muninder. And that brings up the point of mindfulness, being present in that moment, no matter where you are. And that's something a lot of executives struggle with today, because they may be in this meeting, but their mind is racing ahead to the 5 different meetings they have the following day. And that lack of presence doesn't necessarily help them, because they're not in that moment. They're not giving their very best in that meeting. So they're creating more and more challenges down the lane. So those, all of those are great thoughts and spark so much within me. I would also love to hear from your own life experiences. I know you are very, very passionate about leadership development across the Asia Pacific and worldwide. What is your approach to enabling that mindset shift in executives?
So, and I'm going to probably put myself in the center and share with you how I have transformed, if I can use that strong word, and I'm intentionally using that word, transform, after joining CCL. And I'll probably start with a statement which is a matter of fact. A self-aware person can actually turn out to be a great leader. All that you said, Megha, in terms of not being in the moment, having 6 things playing on your mind, that all signals to me a self-aware person. That you are aware of what the challenges are, but now what do you do with those challenges? So with that statement, when I say self-aware person can be a great leader, I also want to say that, for a person to be to be able to lead people, they must have in-depth knowledge about themselves. And when I say in-depth knowledge about themselves, what are my triggers? What brings a smile on my face? How can I support other people? Because as a leader, it's less about doing the work, it's about getting the work done, right?
Yes.
This belief of self-awareness, I've carried with me for the longest period. But coming to CCL, it was more of a self-discovery, if you will. Again, it's a CCL statement, but I'm going to translate it differently. Again, there is always this conversation around leaders are born and leaders are made. I strongly believe no one is a born leader. And it is the capability that has to be cultivated and put into effort like any other skill. Again, a quote that's very close to my heart on this particular piece is, leadership is like a muscle. The more intelligently you train, the better you get. So a very simple phrase, but if you practice leadership and you train it like a muscle, it's going to develop over a period of time. I have always believed, Megha, and that's come to life in CCL, I always want to be a lifelong learner. Since learning is a never-ending process, there's always a possibility to learn and improve myself. So going into a meeting, I go with the mindset of saying, in addition to getting the job done, I'm going to have solid 2 or 3 takeaways from this meeting for myself. The same values have to be prioritized by every leader. And I'm sure in social media, you must be seeing 7 things a leader needs to do, 5 things a leader needs to do. And I think they're very, very individual to each person. Again, pointing back to how self-aware you are. Going back to what you said, Megha, a short while ago, executive needs to believe in themselves about how to have and hone a growth mindset. And once they have a growth mindset, the entire methodology that they have in terms of their approach to work or a situation changes. To unlock a growth mindset, I encourage leaders to motivate themselves to find out why they think what they think and what influences the actions that they take. We know that there are toxic bosses.
Yes.
What's in their mind? What's going on for them? It's important to understand. Actually understanding, are their thoughts aligned with their perceived desired outcomes? If not, it creates an urgent need for them to rewire their mindsets.
Totally.
Also, you've heard in the past as well. I strongly believe and promote an owner's mindset compared to a tenant's mindset. For the team that I manage and have managed, the only question for the team members have been, if you were the owner, would you do it? If the answer to you is yes, please go ahead. If no, then question yourself and find out a solution.
That's a great way to look at it. I'd never heard about the owner's mindset before, but very empowering.
Thank you. Also, the fact is, only when a person feels the urge to work by taking accountability and then taking appropriate action, you see the results take place.
Yes.
Also important, aligned to the growth mindset is, and this is again a one-liner that I use often, recognition is only second to love. And at work, you can't love, so let's recognize. So it's important for us to celebrate the wins with the team for future success together. At the end of every leadership program that we've kind of delivered in India and the region, I'm always eager to see the change in the leader-employee dynamics, which results from shift in the perspective. And I say this because, Megha, being in the consulting industry for now 26 years, before joining CCL, yes, I had a network. Today, I have a deep network. I think big difference there.
Talk to me more about that, Muninder. That's interesting.
So, and I'll probably give you an anecdote there as well, Megha. We all invest in stocks, right? So, as an investor, Megha, this is a question back to you. Would you invest in stock that grows or would you invest in stock that doesn't grow?
That's a no-brainer. The former, stocks that grow.
Fantastic. Similarly, for a leader, right? You have 10 members that you work with. You will probably pay a lot more attention to a person who is open to feedback, a person who is acknowledging the feedback, a person who is implementing the feedback. So for me, employees, staff, leaders that you work with, they are stocks. And when they grow, it gives you pleasure.
That's such a great analogy, by the way. Very sticky.
Thank you. The other piece that I would probably say is I have usually asked executives to actively participate in mindfulness to have increased awareness. Mindfulness and self-awareness can truly change the approach the executives take. For an example, and we've heard this growing up, saying, don't treat people the way you wouldn't want to be treated yourself.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So if you're mindful of the impact your statements can make, if you're mindful of the impact your actions can make, because it's not just the staff that you're working with or the team that you're working with, it's also the families that are connected to them.
Certainly.
It's only when leaders are mindful and self-aware, they begin their journey to transform themselves into a compassionate and empathetic leaders. So, and I probably sum it up by saying everything is interconnected and an efficient team is always a result of a mindful leadership and vice versa.
I love it, Muninder. And if I may, could you share any particular strategy that you recommend to your executives in order to build and cultivate mindfulness?
Great point. So I can again give you an example, and this is my working with the coach that was assigned to me, and a big thanks to CCL for that coach. So she kind of explains to me, so Muninder, you're young. Yes, I like to believe I'm young. And second, she says, you want to go fast? I said, absolutely, I want to go fast. So her comparison is, so would you take a Toyota, and no disrespect to any brand, or would you take a Ferrari if you want to go fast? And again, it's a no-brainer, like you said, I don't want a Ferrari. What if the tire of the Ferrari is flat? You won't be able to move, right? What if the engine of the Ferrari is broken? You won't be able to move, right? That goes back to my point of self-awareness, goes to my point of self-love.
Yes.
And, I was reserving this for later, but I'll call it out. Megha, what's extremely important and what we do as leaders, and I'm sure you will acknowledge when I say this, is also conversation with self.
Yes.
And the moment you do self-love and conversation with self, you see that the impact of your leadership is extremely different. is extremely different. For an example, we all get emails, that's a way of life. How we react to emails is most important, and people will give you 10 different things, right?
Yes.
What I've started practicing, and it's working, and it's again linked to the question you had in terms of mindfulness, is should I respond to this email now? Yes or a no? No. Why should I not respond now? It's going to be impulsive response. When should I respond? I'll respond tomorrow. So it's a very simple dialogue that you have with yourself, and it also helps build self-belief more than anything else.
Beautiful, Muninder. You've hit on so many incredible points here. I will say building that relationship with your inner self is something we're never taught. We never are. Somehow we bump into that. I personally did. And, the whole game and how I show up in the workplace has changed over these years, because now I can have those conversations with my very best friend that's going to be with me for the rest of my life. Everybody else could come and go, but our inner self is always there. And just building that relationship with that inner self is so elevating. So I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you for that. I'm also interested in hearing a little bit about, during your work with top-notch executives, what is one biggest roadblock you have experienced, and how do you overcome that?
Great question, right? And again, something I said before, and I'm going to probably repeat now, is someone who's been working with top executives for over a decade, building relationships and nurturing them have become my second nature. Many people I worked with before joining CCL are still in touch with me. And I like to think that they have the capacity to enable mutual growth. Again, a big differentiator, again, from your experience as well, Megha, has been there is a transactional relationship and there's a relationship
Yes.
that you have, right?
Yes.
And the relationship actually matters. As with any team, no matter how like-minded people around you might have, there's always a possibility for differences to arise, right?
Sure.
Those differences shouldn't deter leaders from progressing in their journeys. Because the whole intent, when you are employed, when you are in engagement, or when you are in a conversation, the intent is to reach the final outcome, right?
Yes.
So it becomes important for them to reflect on their mental blocks and dissolve them, I feel. So like the phrase that you use, let go of your baggage.
Yes.
Only when you let go of your baggage, you can pick up something new. Sometimes senior execs may be unable to keep with evolving cultures due to their changing norms, normalization of certain approaches. But in such settings, what helps them gain perspective is they have an opportunity to contribute towards the well-being of their employees. So today, if you look at it, Megha, and I'm going back, close to 2 decades back when I was consulting with a client organization, they mentioned, if you look at a P&L of an organization, you have all the assets listed there. So computers, machinery, furniture, blah, blah, blah. But what is the most important asset in an organization is human capital. You don't find it there.
Yes.
So it's because it's not that tangible to say, okay, I have, 10 million worth of human capital or 20 million worth of human capital.
Right.
But we all know heart of heart that that's the most important asset that any organization has. Thereby, it makes the responsibility of every leader to ensure that the well-being of their employees is most critical and important. Again, I'll share with you an anecdote and a touching moment. I worked with global CEOs, and I'm going to quote John Ryan, who was the erstwhile CEO of CCL. In my initial conversations with him, we had time set up for 30 minutes. You won't believe it. He would spend 15 minutes talking about my well-being and my family, to the extent that after 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, he knew exactly in which class my younger son was studying. He knew exactly what was happening with my dad, so on and so forth. Can you just imagine the power of that conversation and the impact that it's had on me and my family? Because if someone inquires about my family, I'll definitely go back and tell them that my global CEO was inquiring about you and this is what I said.
Yes. Yes.
You understand that, the impact there?
Yes, real meaningful connection. What is the single best advice you would give to existing and aspiring leaders, given your experience working with leaders all around the world?
I would probably say, Megha, to your point, and this is my personal perspective, having worked with, having interacted with, because not everyone we work with, and having influenced to an extent leaders, I would say the first and foremost and the most important thing for any aspiring leader or any existing leader is learning the power of networking. The power that genuinely networks and human connections hold can take you to places that exceed your imagination. And there are enough anecdotes that I can share with you. There are enough anecdotes that you will have for yourself as well, where the power of networking actually comes into play. And Megha, again, just take an example where you will be able to relate as well. The way we got connected as well was through the power and demonstrates to me the power of networking. Right? I'm sure you will agree with that.
Yes, hands down.
The second piece, would be authentic connections. In the business world, it can actually bring you closer to opportunities than limited networks do. Many a times, as a consultant, as a business leader, as a leadership solutions consultant, you have to let go to say, you know what, this is not what I can do. You know what, it's best to go to someone else if you need this kind of support. That is solely because one thing that connects us with other people is understanding each other. Although this is the most vital skill a leader must have, there are certain components that influence how you are perceived as well. So, Megha, when you speak, when I speak, when you hear people speak elsewhere as well, there's one thing that comes to mind. You know what? This person is speaking authentically, or this person is, I don't think he's speaking from the heart, right?
Right.
The other piece is, so we spoke of, power of networking, we spoke of authentic connections. The third piece that this is my learning, is body language also plays an important role because it creates a lasting impression, not only gives the other person enough information to know what can be expected from you. For an example, you have an interview that you're taking, and if you keep looking at your screen, the person knows you're not interested and he's not getting the job. He or she is not getting the job.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So that's a third thing that I feel, in my experience, emerging leaders, like you said, need to be focusing on. And also what I probably will say, right, a strong personality can give the other person some confidence by showing genuine interest in them as human is what makes the difference. In my case, I've always prioritized making connections with people, sometimes even by approaching them outside of work. This has changed my way of working, and whatever I went, I've always maintained those connections.
Beautiful, Muninder. Yeah.
And again, an anecdote. I was with the university students. This was, I think, last Saturday, so just a week ago, and I was invited as a speaker. And my session was in the second half of the day, but obviously because it was a distance, so we went in the morning. And they had assigned to us student volunteer. And I was wondering, you know what? They were like shadowing me from one place to the other. Wherever I went, they were taking good care, and I did tell them, no one has taken so good care of me, so I'm really honored. What also struck to me was, why don't I use these 3 hours that I have to what's important for these students? Because other than doing a job of, supporting me, they need to have some takeaways for themselves.
Yes.
So we sat down and I asked them, what's most important to you? And they said, you know what, we are struggling with how to attend or take an interview. I said, absolutely. So I said, why don't we do a role play and then we'll do a real play? So we did a role play, and there were 2 people. The moment I gave this opportunity, there were 6 people in the room already. So we went round robin, and guess what? Everyone was saying the same thing except for their name. Then we did a real play where I said, you interview me, and it happens. Guess what? After that, there were 20 people in the room. And immediately after that, one of the students created a WhatsApp group, and now I have about 47 students as a part of that group that reach out to me for real-time mentoring. They reach out to me with any question. It's only been a week, and I'm sure it will grow.
Wow.
Again, as I've said before, learning is a never-ending process that leaders should be willing to take up. And that's the reason you say a CEO, a leader should read X number of books in a year or in a month. But that has different dimensions to it, right? Learning about the environment, learning about the people, and even learning about ourselves equips the leaders with enhanced capabilities to better deal with all sorts of situations. Over the years, and I've said this before, and again, I'd like to conclude with it. Over the years, I've realized that self-awareness defines your persona. You know what your triggers are. A simple change in the mindset and approach towards a task can modestly help you bring about a change which will be a lifelong change that you have. However, I also want to highlight the fact that there are always a chance that you will be met with doubts because is this the right thing to do? I'm doing it for the first time. But if you're focused to accomplish your goal, there's no stepping back at all. The focus and awareness itself can help leaders create a ripple effect that positively impacts their relationships and lives of many leaders that they touch.
Wow. I mean, incredibly well said, Muninder. I have to say, so many rich insights in this quick, brief conversation. Two of my favorites were around the power of networking, and you actually demonstrated how you use networking not just to take, but to give to others. And sadly, networking is not something, it's not a skill that's taught in any business school or boardroom.
True.
It's just not
True.
taught. It's implied, and you just learn as you go. And so I love the focus on networking. And then the other thing that stuck with me is paying attention to the body language. And it is so important. And research has shown that 95% of our communication is nonverbal in nature. It's not the words we're speaking. It's how we carry ourselves and how we are showing up. It's the other
True.
cues we are giving to communicate. So in closing, it's been an absolute privilege having you here on the show, Muninder. You have been wonderful. So thank you so much again for your precious time.
Thank you.
There is no better time than now to build resilience, lead mindfully, and with purpose. We all deserve to live our very best life. This show is brought to you by The Resilient Human, a company on a mission to develop authentic leaders that thrive amidst pressure and have the courage to write their own story. A sincere thanks to all my listeners for the precious time and presence. If you genuinely enjoyed the show, I'd love for you to subscribe and leave a review on your favorite listening platform. Be well, and I can't wait to see you at the next episode of The Boardroom Zen.